Elizabeth, so we've got these 2 new essays from you. Well done. Let's get right into this. Okay, what happened here? The bar chart is what you meant. So the bar chart illustrates the quantity of recorded swine flu cases worldwide in a 10-year period from 1990 to 2000, according to the World Health Organization. Fine. Overall, the cases recorded what happened to your C here? Fluctuated over the 10-year period. Here's how we would have done this. With the highest flu cases registered at the beginning of the period. At the beginning? No, I think you mean at the end of the period, 1997, 1998. Whereas 91, 94, and 99 were the years with the lowest flu cases. Okay. From 1990 to 1994, there was a significant number of affected what's happening here, Elizabeth? So, from 1990 to 1994, there was a significant number of affected. And then here, this is strange. You should have just said starting with around 175,000. That probably makes more sense than this particular construction. Then, the number of victims dropped dramatically by around 550 cases. Fewer cases, yeah. Before this figure increased, reaching, careful, around 160,000 flu victims without the of. The following years, it was a progressive downward trend, reaching the minimum figure of 120,000 affected roughly. From 1995 to 2000, the swine flu cases were just 150,000. This figure rose gradually by 25,000 cases more, with a total of 175,000. Why do you have this? I would have just said with a total of 175,000 in 1997 and 1998. So the only time you'll use respectively like this is if you have 2 different figures. I don't know if it's just a typographical error, but right now as I see it doesn't make sense. And also careful with your typing here. After that year, the number was reduced drastically to just around 122,000 in 1989, and ended the period with an increase of 40,000 victims more. Okay, so I'm fairly certain I've seen this one before. It really would help if you actually included the image in your description so that I can refer to it. That really helps, because here's what happens. There are some times when the description is so clear that I can easily visualize what the writer is describing. But there are other times when there are some areas that lack clarity, and so I really need to refer to the chart. Your goal, of course, is to write it in such a way that I don't have to look at the chart. But here I needed to. And to be honest with you, I just looked it over again. And I think the problem begins actually in your overview, the way you've expressed this. So look at this. You said here in the beginning, we changed this, the highest flu cases registered at the beginning of the period, also 1997 and 1998. So in other words, you're trying to tell me that the highest numbers were in those 3 years, 90, 97, and 98. But, or as you said here, whereas 91, 94, and 99 were the years with the lowest, because you did talk about fluctuation. So, it's the way it's described. I need to refer to the bar chart in order to understand it. Yeah, but okay. You said there was fluctuation. There were lots of ups and downs. It would have really helped if I had had this, even if it's just to double check your data. But let's move on to your next task. Okay, and here it is. All inventions and discoveries, like the discovery of fire and electricity, have impact on our lives, so much so that people can no longer live without them. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Okay, interesting topic. Let's see what you said. The issue of whether or not current societies could survive without the breakthroughs of mankind, such as fire or electricity, has been debated over the last decade. I largely believe that human beings plural, are intrinsically prepared to undergo an evolutionary process where they can fully adapt to completed new environments. In addition, there is ample evidence that the existence of some isolated civilizations, such as African tribes, have not been dramatically compromised due to the lack of commodities in consumer societies, as different solutions were created to meet their needs here. This essay will discuss how individuals would not compromise their lives if some commodities disappeared by using the samples from International Association of Biodiversity in Alaska and the Anthropological Committee in North Africa to support arguments. So this introduction felt a little long to me. I would have actually taken out this whole sentence starting with "in addition." For me, it was just a little too specific for an introduction. I thought that an example like this really belongs in the body, so I would have taken it out. Okay, moving along. First of all, mankind has the ability to adjust to new circumstances and environments. The reason behind this is twofold. First of all, it is in human beings' DNA. You don't mean singular human being, you mean plural, so you need the apostrophe after the S. To learn new skills when new situations arise. Secondly, adaptability. You know, this is the kind of thing to me that really needs a little more explanation. What do you mean? Describe it, give me some extra information. You just kind of throw it out there and then you leave it, but you need to explain it a little further. Secondly, adaptability is the core of human existence due to survival laws. For example, recent empirical research from the International Association of Biodiversity in Alaska showed that Eskimos would be able to readapt in case of dramatic climate change, as they did greatly when they came from Asia. I don't really agree with this word, as they did greatly. I would have just taken it out, or I would have rephrased the sentence. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that individuals are capable of surviving and accommodating to new situations and hardships. Furthermore, there is a case of current civilizations, such as certain African tribes, which, not who, because tribes are things, not people, even though they are composed of people, which live isolated without the luxuries of the 21st century, and no major problems have been presented. This is primarily because they have created different solutions to their needs. Before their needs, I might have preferred here. For instance, an extensive study from the Anthropological Committee in North Africa demonstrated that some practical solutions for meat conservation in indigenous settlements with no electricity was to bury these consumables under salt. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that individuals would be able to adjust and create innovative solutions if some of the historical discoveries did not exist. So, Elizabeth, I had to look at this a couple of different times. I had to reread it basically a few times to think about it a little bit and to give you some feedback on your topic development. I am not 100% convinced that this is appropriate development, because what is a task asking us? It's saying we can no longer live without these. In other words, we're so used to some things like this. These are just examples of some of the things that we're used to, that we can no longer live without them. Now, here what you're doing instead is you're not talking about that. You're saying that people who have never had these things are getting along just fine. And okay, I understand that, but that's not what it's asking you. It's different to never have had something, and something totally different to say, well, I've had it and now I can get along without it. It's very different, and the adaptation to something like that is really, really different. Like, for example, I'm going to give you an example that a lot of people talk about sometimes. It's one thing to be poor your whole life. Okay, that's something that you can adapt to, that a lot of people live with, and it's a totally different experience if you've once had a lot of money and yet suddenly become poor. That's a different transition. And so that's what I wanted you to deal with here in this paragraph, and not the other way, where you're always without something. Okay? So that's why I feel that this whole paragraph isn't really developed. It's not really relevant, essentially, because the way I interpret this, we can no longer live without them, is that we've had them in our lives, and therefore they are essential to our lives. What I would have done is I would have talked about in one of these two body paragraphs why there is some truth to this. I mean, take somebody who has lived their entire life with something like electricity or with fire. I mean, think about these two elements, and they've just given us examples. We don't have to use them, but we certainly could in order to prove our point. And think about how difficult it would be to suddenly be without them. Now, from what I see, you're saying that you are confident in the adaptability of mankind, and that's great. But rather than developing your second paragraph like this, what I would have advised you was to put this paragraph here, okay, and then in your first body paragraph, develop it the way I'm suggesting, that, yeah, you know, it would be really difficult for probably most people, if not all, to suddenly say, hey, you know, you've got electricity, which we use for everything. I mean, think about all the things we use electricity for nowadays, and suddenly, you know, with like a snap, be without it. So you could state why you think there is some validity to that argument, okay? So let's move on. To conclude, it could be acknowledged that it is a natural human, I wouldn't say man ability, it is a natural human ability to evolve, learn, and find new solutions to existing problems, as is currently seen. I wouldn't have said it, or okay, fine, as it is currently seen in indigenous civilizations and tribes. Hence, humankind is profoundly capable of adapting. It is capable of doing something, okay? Of adapting their existence to new realities, even without the presence of significant historical discoveries such as fire. Okay, it's, you know, in terms of the language, it's lovely, but again, I want you to think about what I have suggested here. It just, you know, I want you to have a different perspective. Obviously, the three elements are lovely, you know, your grammar, your coherence and cohesion, your vocabulary, all of that is very good. My biggest concern is really with your task development, because I didn't really feel like this belonged in this essay, as I've already stated, and I'm suggesting what you could have done to replace it. And so I would have put this paragraph here, and then I would have added a paragraph about why there might be some validity to this, okay? I hope you found this helpful. I'm not sure if you have more video corrections with us. I hope you do. I would really love to be able to give you more feedback. So I'm assuming you have more. Correct these essays, send them back, and I will be waiting to see what you have to say in your next essays.